Hey, my name is Bullets, and I'm going to be submitting SUPERHOT to SGDQ 2017. SUPERHOT is a first-person shooter. It's got a very unique sort of premise where, as the screen just said, time only moves when you do. In the kind of, I guess, lens of a speed run, that just means that these levels are designed for you to go slowly through it, and by just playing over and over again, getting muscle memory, trying to route it out better, we've taken these levels and just gotten to a point where you can go quickly through them. If you try this when you normally play, you'll just die instantly, and then you have to learn to treat it like a puzzle and just slowly go through. So for people that have played this game, this run is very interesting to see because they know how difficult the game is and how unforgiving it can be if you try to go too quickly. So they have kind of a respect for that. But even if you haven't seen the game, just how quickly we go through each of these levels and deal with these enemies and have to react to things when they go wrong, it still, I feel, makes an impressive run, even if you haven't played the game, but more so if you have. But anyways, the game's main mechanics, there's not really any large-scale skips that happen in the game. It's mostly an execution-based sort of run. You'll be seeing a lot that we're always jumping around, which is the fastest way of moving in this game. It also allows us to mess up the AI's tracking. They'll try to predict where you're going, but they don't realize that you're kind of going in an arc rather than you're just jumping upwards diagonally. So what they'll do is they'll just shoot straight up at the ceiling or hit the floor a lot of the time. So use that a lot. It's still, for the most part, they'll still aim at you, but you can sometimes manipulate them to just shooting incorrectly. For the level right there, you can actually manipulate where the enemies spawn by intentionally staying to one side of the room and just moving in a way where enemies will only spawn on doors that aren't too close to you. Sometimes they will. The way it works is a little strange, but if you consistently do more or less the same thing, they should always spawn in the same place. So that's a small little interesting thing. And the game's starting to introduce more guns, so at first all we have is the pistol, which has like 4 to 6 shots, and like everything in this game, it just kills in one hit. And then it introduces a shotgun, which shoots a lot more bullets, but only has 2 to 3 shots. Even though it's a double-barreled shotgun, for some reason it's got a third shot in there somewhere. There are a few levels like this. Break, and coming up later will be a hospital, where enemies can spawn. They spawn in the same place, but they spawn with randomized weapons, which changes their AI, so they do different things, but it also makes them more or less dangerous. So obviously you don't want people to spawn with a bunch of shotguns. You can have where all 6 of the enemies that have random weapon spawns just have shotguns, and you get messed up by that. That's where a lot of the improvising and like reading a situation really quick and deciding, okay, I need to go over here, grab this, just all that going through your mind. It's an interesting part of the run. It's not just set in stone muscle memory. A lot of the levels are muscle memory, but there are definitely these situations where you can show off just quick thinking and trying to play quickly through a lot of experience with playing the game. I didn't mention it before, there are a few levels. We'll be doing it after this level server, where there's little transitions afterwards where the map will fade away and there's dialogue that happens. And for the most part we can skip a good percentage of these, so it just kind of keeps the run going the entire time. Like right now, the second you kill the last enemy, the flag in the game triggers that you've killed everybody and that you can go to the next level. So instead of going through normally, with a few of them, quitting out is a little faster because you skip all that. There's these little intermission levels as well, which are a good time to explain what's kind of coming up ahead, because each of them are actually positioned pretty well because they're usually before something interesting or complicated is happening. Like for this one, hospital's coming up, which is, in my opinion, the hardest level in the entire game. So I have time to kind of explain that hospital's difficult because it's got that random weapon spawn we were talking about before. At the very beginning of the level, there's dialogue that pops up, like after you kill these guys down here. When you grab this pistol, there's dialogue on the screen. When there's dialogue on the screen, it actually blocks the crosshair from being visible. And also there's shattered glass, which just blocks you from being able to see. So you have to basically make a blind shot in this level if you want to do it quickly. And if you miss that, there's a good chance the guy will just kill you. So it's a very difficult beginning shot, and then you just have to deal with a little bit of randomness, what they spawn with here. But for the most part, it's nothing you can't deal with. This is just usually where when you're doing attempts is where you're gonna lose a run to. But in a marathon, resets are very quick. You won't see any in this run since I'm commentating over the record, which is deathless, which is very rare. But deaths in this game are incredibly quick. You can just restart instantly, and you're right at the beginning again. So the game's very consistent with what sort of times you could see at a marathon. So we have the next dog level coming up. And the level afterwards, it introduces, I think it's, no, it's not the first level that's a katana, but it's the first level, I believe, that you spawn with a katana. And there's a lot of melee weapons in the game. They're all just kind of reskinned versions of the baseball bat, and they'll just shatter in a few hits. But the katana is the only melee weapon where you have infinite uses. There is actually an entire there's an entire challenge mode where you just use katanas, which is interesting to show off. It could be a possible additional incentive. Anyways, yeah. Right after this level is elevator, which if hospital didn't exist, this would probably be the toughest level because you have to deal with a lot of people with weapons in a very small area. And after you kill 2 people in this area, not even after you kill all 3, after you kill 2, those doors open and there's 2 guys with shotguns there. So this is like the first, not the first level, but for a lot of people playing casually, that's a level you get stuck on a lot. So being able to consistently jump on one guy while punching another guy and then punch that guy after you land, like all in that one smooth motion, is very difficult to get down. The thing though is, even though it is a difficult level, like doing the level takes like less than 10 seconds, so resetting really doesn't lose that much time. So this is the last dog level. This one, just you have to spam escape, so you leave instantly once it lets you. You don't really have to spam escape this much. I just kind of do it idly so that it instantly happens. But I know when you're supposed to press it, so I can just not have the screen flashing that much. But yeah, this is the first dialogue that we really can't skip in the game. You actually can't skip this in New Game Plus too. New Game Plus does skip some of the transitions and dialogue in between. So it does cut down the game's runtime by 3 or 4 minutes, just in dialogue and little intermission period. But yeah, it kind of reveals a little bit of the plot of the game. The game's kind of like a meta sort of game within a game sort of thing going on, where you're given a cracked copy of a game and your friend gives that to you, and the game starts communicating with you basically, and it kind of starts telling you what to do and to stop playing it, but then later on you kind of get controlled by it almost. So anyways, now we're back to actually clicking things. That ledge is a little difficult to get up. A lot of these levels, there's like a general strategy you're going for these ones, but in the end there's a lot of, okay, these people are heading this way, these people are heading this way, I'm going to react to this, but it's not set in stone for the most part. We are getting to the second half of the game. The game kind of separates itself into 2 separate halves, because after this one there's a level called Hacker, and there's about a 2-minute intermission after that. And the nice thing is, that does give you plenty of time to explain a mechanic that's introduced in the second half of the game. But for this part, there's a few levels like this where the objective is not to just kill everybody, it's to just do some sort of thing, or to move in a certain way, or just do whatever the game tells you to. But yeah, that's a nice thing, just with how the little breaks in the game are situated. It does give you time to explain anything that would possibly confuse people. Though hot switching is not a very confusing mechanic. I have done this at a few online marathons, and I've never had too much confusion over the mechanic after I've explained it during this point. But yeah, at this point the game wants you to, it's supposed to have a dialogue where it tells you that you punched yourself and that you need to go to the hospital and you need to stop playing the game. And if you keep trying to go into the game, it'll start blocking you out of going through the options, and it'll eventually blur out all the options except for quit. So at that point, it already flags that the game's ready for you to go to the second half, so you can just Alt F4 and go back into it. But yeah, this is the only dialogue we actually have with our friend the entire game. We ignore him the entire time, and then we have one dialogue with him, and he's really upset at us because we've ignored him the entire game. But yeah, the mechanic that's going to be introduced after this, it's called hot switching, and it allows you to, if you put your cursor on someone and press E, You basically switch to their body. I mean, it's a very descriptive name. You switch to their body. Your old body just dies, and the weapon that you had before stays with that body. The weapon that the person you're switching to had gets thrown away. Though later on we will, I think one level will have a way to avoid having that happen, so we can be ready to actually shoot something. Because that's the one downside to it. Like, it's really good for getting away from dangerous situations or for quickly getting across rooms. But there's obviously that downside of you have no weapon afterwards. So there is situations where we will need to, prevent them from throwing their weapon away. But this part, just waiting little intermission period before fall pops up. But yeah, this is, you can't hear it. Obviously I have it muted because I don't want to have like double my voice. It'd be a little confusing. But this part is supposed to say super hot each time you press the button. You're supposed to spam E and left click. And for some reason when you mash it really fast, it just starts saying hot soup or soup hot. So it's kind of a joke within the community. Anyways, so that was hot switching right there. You just look at somebody and switch into their body. It's nothing too crazy or complicated. We use it in these first few levels a lot, and then after that we kind of use it more as a backup mechanic, or at least I use it as more of a backup, like if something goes really wrong. It's a nice little safety net. But yeah, like right there. I want to get to that assault rifle, but that guy is right there. So if I try to run all the way up there, I'll die. So the best option, obviously, is to switch up to him. Save me a bunch of movement time. Office is the first level where I don't use it, and just because everything's so close that there's not really a lot of room to maneuver around. But the interesting thing about some of these levels is that there's a variety of strategies that have been found by new runners and people that have run this for a while. We all have sort of different takes on some of these levels. Like, there's obviously the beginning levels, there's not too much variation, but as you get further on, there's a lot of strategies where when I started running, you find that someone's doing this strategy, but you really want to start doing this, so you kind of combine the two, and people kind of make their own strategies out. So it's an interesting part of it. There's not just one absolute best way of doing things. Like, if you kind of favor stomping people, which is jumping on them, which instantly destroys them, you can kind of incorporate that more, or whatever sort of playstyle you have. So it's interesting in that way. It gives a little bit of freedom. But anyways, right there was what I was talking about before with hot switching and keeping the weapon. If you throw something at someone, it'll stun them and it'll throw their weapon away. But if you hot switch right after you do that, their weapon will still be floating in front of them, so you can grab it out of the air. So you don't you don't hot switch into someone weaponless, basically. And in this last section of the game, each of these levels have a small little intermission beforehand, which gives a little bit of time to explain what's kind of going on with each level. But yeah, that's train. We only have a few more levels left, normal levels, and then at the end we have kind of a different level, which again just so happens to have a small little section where there's not too much going on, where there's enough time to explain it. So the game is nice enough to offer like these little periods of time where you can explain mechanics and like what's going on the next level, but not too much time. The only time there's any large sort of pause in the gameplay is that intermission before you get hot switching. But lobby, which is the level we're going into right now, is the final of the traditional levels, where the goal is just to click all the enemies and you win. After that, the game goes to kind of not even like the boss level, but like the final or an ultimate level. So coming up, after Long Way, which is very descriptive, you just jump in a straight line, obviously bunny hopping to save time. After that is Core, which the mechanic with Core is that you're going to be trying to hot switch into this red pyramid that's in the middle of the room. And you have to do this 4 times. There's 4 different phases. And after these phases, it increases the amount of enemies that will spawn in the room, and it also increases the time it takes for your hot switch to recover. Like after you hot switch into it and you get kicked out of the red pyramid, it'll make sense once you see it the first time. After you get kicked out of it, it has a longer cooldown. And the cooldown for hot switching recovers in real time, so jumping around and moving around as quickly as possible, it's the best way to do it instead of just standing completely still. So you'll see right here, there's just a big red pyramid in the middle of the room, and you just hot switch into it. And then afterwards, you just mash enter to get this text to go away. But anyways, so you'll do this 3 more times after this, and each time it gets tougher and tougher. But the next one, it's not that difficult because there's just a couple enemies there, and you can just jump around them and then strafe into that corner. Strafing into walls and corners like that makes the game think that you're going at full speed, like as if you were just constantly moving in a circle. So it always goes at full time. For the third phase, we have to get our way up here, which we're surrounded by a bunch of enemies with like shotguns and assault rifles and pistols, so there's a very good chance of getting shot there. But as you can see, the reset is extremely quick, excuse me, if we were to die there. But yeah, that is the third phase. And the last phase is similar to the third one beforehand, though we do grab a wrench there for safety. Because around that corner, there's a lot of enemies spawning with random weapons this section of the game. And that guy that comes around that corner, he can have nothing, he can have a shotgun, he can have a pistol, he can have an assault rifle, he can have a lot of things. So just as safety, in case he comes around with a bad weapon, you obviously don't want to die here. Though this is one of the common places to die, but thankfully, most of the deaths in this level are pretty quick as well, just like the main sections of the game. And then it ends with you pretty much being given unlimited hot switching, so you can just swap from body to body without any sort of restriction. Like you don't have to wait for any, what's it called? Any sort of cooldown in between. But yeah, that's basically SUPERHOT. There's another, I guess, minute sort of ending section, and then you finish the game when you click yourself at the end of the game. But yeah, that's more or less SUPERHOT. That is any percent. The other categories, like for all secrets, the run is the same, except there are terminals set in each level, so there's a little bit of extra routing involved with when are you, like, you have to get the terminals before you finish the level the first time. So you have to kind of route out, are you going to do the level twice? Are you going to just get the terminal and restart? Or are you going to complete the level and get the terminal before you kill everybody, so you kind of save a little bit of time there. But not all levels allow you to do that, so there's a lot of different routing to that. New Game Plus just cuts down on the intermissions in between, so that 2-minute intermission between Hacker and Fall doesn't exist, as well as I think another 2 or 3 minutes of time saved by that throughout the rest of the run. But yeah, those are the 3 categories I am submitting for SGDQ 2017. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you'll consider this.